Today, I will use a scenario to showcase some of Axon's best features, along the way demonstrating how business-friendly and usable the tool is. As you can see from the top right corner, I am now logged in as Katrina Applegate. Katrina is a Chief Data Officer, and as such is responsible for making sure data is up to regulatory standards for regulations such as BC/BS 239, amongst others. She's just come from a meeting where she's received a complaint that the credit risk exposure report has some data quality issues, and she's going to use the Informatica Axon data governance platform to investigate and try and solve these. This is the homepage that we see here, but to get into Unison Search, you can either click here or here and expose all of the different inventories available. When this fires up, we're going to see a list of different inventories across the top. Here we have datasets, attributes, systems. These are all different lists, which of the different kind of categories of things that we can store in Axon. There are 25 of these out of the box, all the most useful ones that we've found most beneficial in the past. At the moment, we can only see the 6 that are exposed, but we can bring in anything via this addition to the side. Here I could add a process, for example, choose to apply the changes, and then my processes will be added to that list across the top. We like to keep it usually just down to 5 or 6, just to keep it uncluttered and clear, but you can expose them all if you would like. Now what these lists allow you to do is just really organize all of your different metadata items. In this case, Katrina's come in looking for a dataset. So she goes straight into the dataset facet and she can click in the keyword search and start typing the name of the report she's interested in. When she's typed in the first couple of words, it will appear as it recognizes intelligently that there is only one item with such a name. If I click there and hit enter, what this is going to do is focus Unison on that item. So this is the report she wants to investigate. It's searching up here and it's found that there's just one data set, which is what we expected. It's the specific report. But it's also found that there are 6 attributes that are in that data set. There's one system in which that data set actually sits within. There's 6 glossary items, and so on and so forth. What Unison Search has now done is focused on that report and found all of the connections. There are, for example, 17 processes linked to that report, and it's exposing all of those connections. As it's actually also linked to 12 data quality rules, we should be able to see a dashboard. Katrina has come to discover more about the data quality of this report, so that would be her first port of call. If we click into dashboard, here we can see that there are 5 different graphs representing different things about the DQ rules. These graphs can be configured for any client in any kind of way they want. These are just our out-of-the-box solutions. They're also fully interactive. So if I remove, for example, low criticality rules, then all of the graphs will adjust to reflect those 9 rules rather than those 12. These data quality options is what Katrina would be interested in, as that's what she's come looking for. But since we're here, let's quickly just look at the other graphs we offer out of the box. We have stewardship, so this gives you an idea of what kind of roles are linked to the data set. So we've got ownership roles, knowledge roles, stewardship roles. We also can have a look at where the people who are sitting in them are sitting within the organization. We can see if people are accepting their rules and if any change requests are being created or updated in relation to that object. Process is also another out-of-the-box graph option we have. This might be useful for Katrina on another day. For example, as BC/BS 239 is very interested in what processes are automated, partially automated or manual. It advises that a certain percentage are automated rather than manual, obviously, as that is generally preferable. And here is a very easy way to get an overview of the systems, of the processes related to the dataset in question. So in this instance, though, Katrina has discovered that it's the data quality she wants to know about. She's going to look at all of her rules at once, bring those back into view, and she can see that the issue seems to be around completeness. but she doesn't know where it's coming from yet. She just knows there's some kind of problem within her dataset around the completeness of an attribute. The CMDID is what was called into question. She wants to now go and investigate why that's happening and see if she can find a solution. If we click into maps, then we are going to get a system lineage map as default. So there are different options here. You can also add dataset lineage map or a multi-node lineage map, which allows you to bring in all sorts of different facets and see any kind of connections between them. But for this case, we're interested in system lineage. Now what we have here, what this map has done is scoped based on the requirements. So as I mentioned, the Unison search has focused on this one specific dataset and everything connected to it. In this case, the dataset sits in a system called RWA. As there is only one system that is linked here to this dataset, that is why there is only one orange node in this map. If it was linked to 5 different systems, if we're doing a search on multiple, then they would all be orange. But in this case, we just get one orange node, and then we can see all of these black symbols which are linked to it because they have some kind of attribute lineage or an interface. So to be clear, these filled in lines that are feeding RWA represent where some kind of attribute is being passed along the chain down to RWA. Now it may be that BDD passes something to MCDMs, pass on, that we're not interested in this case. This is giving us the full view of all the lineage. So anything that feeds RWA, anything upstream of it, or if there was anything downstream of it, would be included. We also can see here that BVD is a system which has some kind of connection to RWA. This dotted line means that there has been established that there is some kind of interface between these systems. Now that could have happened via a discovery tool. They've recognized something technical, but they haven't actually explained the specifics of what attributes are being passed along yet. It could be that somebody held their hands up and said, yes, I take information manually out of BVD and put it into RWA, and so there is a connection, but they haven't yet focused on which attributes are there. What you do then is create these interfaces, which we see as a kind of scaffolding, which allow for further discovery and collaboration to build up that knowledge base. You can also see that on this map we have different symbols in some places. We've got Excel spreadsheets with symbolized with the X here, Access databases. We can also have PowerPoints, Microsoft Word documents, whatever is needed to create that full picture of how the data is really traveling through different, we call them systems, but we use the term loosely. Otherwise, in traditional system lineage maps, you may use a lot of the detail. Here we need to know that this spreadsheet is part of the process. And that is what Katrina has come to investigate. So, in Katrina's case, she is wanting to find out about the data quality. And so she's probably going to find out about the specific attribute that she wants to know about. So she cares about the CMDID, because that's what was complained about in the meeting she came from. So if I've just added the linking attributes overlay, what's going to happen is this is going to redraw the map with all the attributes available, and we can see that here in RWA, CMDID is here, and we can trace it back to its strategic source, the CMD system. Now there's a lot of going on in here, so if I just focus on this, I can cut out a lot of the noise and redraw that map to see the progression of that attribute along that map there. So as you can see, the CMDID travels through all of these systems, but it's called different things along the way. Counterparty ID, party ID, etc., etc. Now, what we want to find out really is why the data quality in the credit risk report that's in the RWA system is so bad. Where does it fall off and how can we fix it? So Katrina is going to add the data quality overlay to try and get some more information about that. If we zoom out a bit here, Katrina can see that CMDID is coming all the way along this lineage map, and until pretty far along it seems to be doing very well. Its completeness, which is what we are concerned about as we saw in the dashboard, is 92% in this system here, DWH, but somehow when it gets to RWA we're down to 68%. And perhaps that's not particularly surprising, as we can see that there's an Excel spreadsheet in between, and that there's no data quality information entered for it. So perhaps there being no data quality checks here, we want to ensure that a data quality rule is kept up on that system too, so that things like this don't happen. So Katrina might decide to find out about the stakeholders around that object so that she could ask them to implement a DQ rule or just ask them a bit more information and background generally. So I'm adding the stakeholders overlay. If I zoom back in now, you can see that actually, while all of these other systems have stakeholders, system business owners, SMEs, data SMEs, etc., CDFS doesn't seem to have anyone who's responsible for it. So again, that's a bit of a red flag. But because of a great feature of Axons, it doesn't necessarily mean the end of the line. If we click here to handily go straight into the object, then we can open up this spreadsheet and go into the Stakeholders tab. We know that there aren't any direct stakeholders, as we've already seen that from the map, because they would have shown up in that Stakeholders overlay. But what we can leverage is this thing called the Stakeholder Community. So the Stakeholder Community is where the CDFS system itself doesn't have any stakeholders, but it is connected to items that do. In this case, it's connected to datasets, glossary items, and projects, which have stakeholders who may have some information on this system, seeing as we have no one immediate who's responsible for it. If we click into glossary, we can see that CMDID is a glossary item which actually does have stakeholders. Which is going to be great for us because that's the attribute we're interested in. So while we couldn't go to the system owners themselves, we can go to people like, look, we've got a DQ steward on the CMDID. We've got glossary definition owners and SMEs who are responsible for this attribute in its conceptual form. So should be interested in the fact that its data quality is suffering downstream and should be able to tell us a bit about what's going on there. So if we click into CMDID, this is going to open up the glossary item itself. We can see that we've got a bit of information here about, where it belongs in the hierarchy. It's a party identifier, which we knew, what kind of length it should be. We've got some basic information. Strategic source is the CMD system, as we knew. But we want to find out how to raise a change request because we want to make sure that a data quality rule is implemented in the CDFS system to make sure that that data quality issue is no longer an issue. Here, you can select to raise a change request. Now, any user can do this. So any user at any time, whether or not they have any permissions on the specific object, can come in and raise a CR so that they can bring an issue to the attention of the key stakeholders. Now, I'm just going to click into one I created earlier because that will be a bit quicker than creating a new one. So here I can see there's the option to implement DQ rule for credit exposure report. So this is a change request, get straight to the point. We've got this credit exposure report. Its data quality is suffering because the CMDID isn't sufficiently complete in this system. We know that it's complete and the data quality is good upstream and that it's suffering because of this CDFS system, so we need to add a DQ rule at this point to ensure the completeness does not suffer. So that's going to be sent down the data quality rules implementation workflow, which what will have happened here is it will have been raised as a change request and it will go send a notification to each of these stakeholders. There could be multiple of them, but any glossary definition owner, steward, SME, or DQ steward will get a notification saying there's a change request that's been raised against the CMDID item. Which workflow do you want to steer it down? There would be a number of options, default and custom potentially. And in this case, it seems obvious that it should go down the data quality rules implementation workflow. So once any of these stakeholders has selected that workflow, it will start off here. It will move on to the first step for the glossary steward to validate the request. Anyone involved can write a comment. So if, for example, John Adams wanted to involve another stakeholder who isn't, not a stakeholder, another potentially interested party, somebody who might have something to say but isn't a direct stakeholder, he can tag them as he has here by using the @ sign, and writing their name. He will then get his own notification to come in and contribute to the workflow. So that's a way that you can really collaborate. It starts off with the core stakeholders involved, but you can also bring in anyone you want. As these steps are clicked through, so as the glossary steward validates the request and clicks that that's complete, these boxes will highlight, notifications will get sent to the relevant people until finally a resolution is found. And this is how very easily, with a complete audit and very clear responsibilities, a change can be made from a simple investigation within Axon. Thank you.